Did you ever just think everything's going fine and then you wake up one morning and it's not? That's what happened to me. It started with a breakup and work and COVID and finances and health and family. And normally you get one of these things, not all of these things. I was just overwhelmed. I was, stressed out completely. And over a period of time, I tried to find some solutions to how to deal with all of this. And I came up with three recommendations, and they are
Welcome, everyone. Today, our topic is how to start over and create the life you deserve. And we're going to talk to Denise Kearney, a friend of mine for over 20 years, because she's exactly done that. She started over and created the life that she wants and deserves. She's been a teacher, she's been an employment counselor, she's worked in the federal public service. So, without further ado, let me invite Denise. Denise, hello.
hi, hi, it's me. How are you? Nice to
Nice
see
to
you
see
today.
you. Oh
Thank
my
you.
gosh. Oh, that looks so beautiful. How is you're in Portugal. You made
I
a
am.
dramatic change in your life. You
Absolutely.
uprooted from Canada, went over to Portugal, and there you are. It looks lovely.
It
Uh,
is lovely.
Mm. And so tell me, where exactly are you?
I am in the center of Portugal, and it is 2.5 hours north of Lisbon and an hour and a half south of Porto.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
Oh, and I should say a small village called Vila Nova de Poiares.
okay. And what does that mean?
It means new town of pears.
Okay. So a lot of pear trees there, or
A lot of fruit trees for sure, including pear trees.
oh, neat, neat. And what is the weather like?
Oh, well, as you can see, I'm sitting outside. It's gorgeous. It's 24, 25 degrees in the sun and very nice.
Wow. And here we are in Canada. It's mid-June as we're recording. And it's actually pretty cold. It's 16 degrees centigrade. So
Nice.
there you
Come
go.
on over.
I would love to. I would love to. And I will. That's on my bucket list for sure. So, we're going to talk about you starting over, and I really wanted to drill down a little deeper into all of these issue areas that you said you had. So let's circle back to work. You said there were some issues at work. What are you talking about? What sort of things?
Well, like you said in the introduction, I've worked over 30 years for the public service, and I've worked with a variety of people and teams and jobs, and always did pretty good, really had a really good connection with most people. And but this last job that I had, unfortunately, I met with a manager who was very ambitious and micromanaging, probably insecure, but she made my life, well, probably some of you will understand when I say a living hell. And it was a very toxic environment. And I tried to do all the steps that they say to do, talk about it, communicate, be flexible, be understanding, let it go. I did the whole kit and caboodle, but there was just no turning that boat around. She did not feel comfortable with me, and she wanted me to feel that. And so it led to, sleepless nights and lots of anxiety, and even to the point where I was blanking out when she would ask me questions because I was so stressed of, what she was going to respond and how she was going to speak to me.
Wow. Job stress is a thing, you know. We've all faced job stress on an ongoing basis, and that's okay. I think it's when it goes into the realm of being toxic,
Hmm.
and affecting your health. You really have to do something about it, move out of the area, make an exit strategy. It can be really, really difficult. Now, were your finances related to the work piece?
Well, let's take it from a different angle. One of the biggest things that happened that really kind of triggered, it seemed to have triggered this complete chaos in my life, is that I had a 9-year relationship with a man I loved very much, and he decided to take a different route. And it really left me completely heartbroken, and lost, like lost, because I had thought there was future plans, and we had just made the steps to buy a new house in the Ottawa region. And even he stepped away from that and left me with the responsibility to take on that mortgage, and the house required a great deal of renovations. But as most people do, I thought, okay, well, make lemonade out of lemons. And so I put in an apartment into my basement and changed it into an Airbnb, and that started going well. So I thought, okay, you know, this is going okay. And then guess what? COVID hit.
Mm.
And when there's COVID and then there was lockdowns, there was almost no more Airbnb except for a few specialists that came to town.
Yeah, I do remember that time. It was very, very difficult for everybody, particularly with these lockdowns. All the small businesses were out of business. Airbnb, completely non-existent, no zero income, that people, many were relying on that income. And so, yeah, I feel your pain there. And then on top of that, we were all afraid of one another. We didn't want to contaminate people. We did not want to be contaminated as
Mhm.
well. So, how did that affect your relationships with your friends, family?
Well, of course, when there's fear and there's the unknown, people react in many different ways. And some people reacted in very strong ways and were um, some people closed doors. Some people had stringent requirements. Some people were upset. Some people took it like it was daily life. And being an empath, somebody who has, a heart on her sleeve sort of thing, it really affected me to see so many people hurting and suffering and people arguing, and then on top of that, my heartbreak, and then this overwhelming feeling of, hefty mortgage for 30 years and no end in sight. And yeah, that, it all started taking a toll because I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I wasn't exercising, I wasn't happy. I wasn't at peace. I was in turmoil inside.
Um, of that
Mhm.
emotional piece, can you maybe describe that a little more for us?
Well, it's because of COVID, and I was an independent woman living in our own house, but because of COVID, it left really a feeling, even though I had good friends and good family that I could call on the phone, uh, having that direct contact, to be sitting side by side somebody or have somebody give you a hug, was far and few between because of the situation. And so a lot of times I just felt really alone. And for the first time in my life, I actually felt depressed. I never thought, I'm not a depressed person, and I also feel bad for people who are depressed, but I didn't understand how it felt. It's like basically it's when there's no more hope
Hmm.
for me
And
anyway.
and I know that I know a lot of friends who have expressed that to me, that during the lockdowns they were really, really depressed because where is the social cohesion? Where's the social activities that we normally
Mhm.
participate in? We're social creatures. We need to be with one another. And so, yeah, I can imagine that if you're going through a lot of stuff in a number of different dimensions, that it's going to exacerbate any feelings you have. I'm sorry you had to go through that. What happened with regards to your health? Because if you're going through all of this, I'm sure it might have taken some toll on your health.
Well, you can imagine. I'm blanking out. I can't remember what I'm doing. I'm not sleeping. Like I said, I'm anxious. Um, I'm upset. I'm crying because, of course, I'm sad about my relationships. And and then I got some bad news. I had just gone to the doctor before the lockdowns happened, and they had found a mass
Wow. Oh my
in my
goodness.
breast. And
Oh,
you know, that process took 8 weeks to find out if I had cancer or not.
the
During,
scariest, I'm sure, the scariest 8 weeks in any woman's life. So, so in those 8 weeks, what did you do? Like, how did you get through those 8 weeks?
well, you try to be logical and you stay calm, like in everything. It's like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And so I was thinking, okay, in 8 weeks, I'm going to find out the result. And it's either no treatment because I don't have cancer, or there'll be treatment with cancer and maybe surgery, and sadly, possibly death. It
Mhm.
is part of our our worry as women is that if we do get breast cancer or other types of cancers, there is always a possibility of death. But
Yeah.
you don't go completely down that path. You say, okay, I'm going to prepare so that my children and loved ones don't have to dig through and figure out what's going on in my life. So, you start making lists of passwords, you start cleaning out your back closets, and of course we're not supposed to circulate, and we're at home working because of COVID. So on your as soon as you finish work, you start cleaning out things, you start listing uh what can be done if there is an issue.
hmm And boy, I'm so sorry you went through all of that. I mean, on every front. I certainly have gone through, setbacks, if you will. And they've been kind of gradual. They haven't been like a massive, explosion in every area. And so
Uh,
that must have been really hard for you. And even though I've known you for 20 years, I did not know exactly what you were going through because, sometimes we have these conversations and they're about different topics. We don't really go deep into everybody's life.
And
Um,
I wasn't being forthright. I wasn't being completely honest with myself or with my friends. I didn't want to sound like a loser. My whole life is falling apart. I
mm,
figured, I'm going to do like I always do and find solutions, and I'll just have maybe one or two things to deal with. But no, yeah, everything was much more complicated than that. And I'm sure the people that are listening, uh, they also recognize that they've probably gone through multiple issues at the same time. It's
mhm.
it's overwhelming.
It is, it is. But the thing is, you somehow got yourself out to the other side of things. And I really want to know from you, based on your experience, what kind of strategies or tips or three recommendations that you have for people, because I know even among my friends and family, they're starting over in a different country. They're wanting to move to. I have people that I know that want to move, say, from Africa to Canada or from Bangladesh, India, etc. They want to make a big, bold move. That in itself is a lot. And then there are others going through divorce and all of that, which sometimes have been self-initiated, sometimes it's thrown upon you by the other person. So, there's a lot of people struggling. And so what kind of recommendations do you have for them?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of things that people can do, but I'm going to just share what I did myself. And as women, we're usually multitasking and doing multiple things and running around and always thinking of what to do next. And the first recommendation really is to stop. Just stop. Take a breath and take stock. Then the second thing, of course, is to plan. And I can give you some more detail. And then the third thing is to execute that plan. It's pretty simple in one way.
That's great. So, let's circle back to taking stock. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes we think that the problem's bigger than it really is. So just by stopping, resting, eating better foods, because sometimes we're so busy, we don't realize that part of the problems are created by ourselves. And so by not sleeping well, being over anxious, not eating well, not exercising, uh, that are all things that we could control. And so I took stock of that, like, okay, take care of self. If I'm feeling better, if I, clearly I'm not taking good care of myself because my body's reacting and I need to start with that. And then, of course, your diet. Yeah, make sure you start eating really good foods and get away from processed foods.
You know what?
And
As a nutritionist, I totally agree with that. But when you're under stress, I don't know. I tend to just eat anything. I'm a human being. I'm gonna eat all the things that I normally don't eat because it's sort of like I need to stay alive, and however I can do it, I will. But we actually need to be mindful and conscious of what we're putting into our body, especially because we're under so much stress and turmoil and so on. So, no, I agree with that. You really have to consciously make an effort to
Mhm.
make sure that you're eating well. So that's good. And exercising, it's sort of the last thing you want to do. It's like I'm so tired, I don't even want to get up. And especially when you're depressed, you don't feel like it. But I'm glad that you were aware, you were self-aware enough to essentially, you know, see that that's what you needed to do. What about the emotional piece? Did you think about how to handle that? I mean, I'm sure you talked about crying and getting the emotions out and all of that.
Well, there's a number of things. I've journaled my whole life, so journaling does help to uh, put down thoughts and feelings and events and put down positive things that have happened in your life. I also started reading a lot of self-help books, which include Marc Gervais, who's a Quebec man who worked as a police officer, and
What is
he
his
has
name? What is his name? Sorry.
Marc Gervais,
Mark.
Marc,
Hmm.
Marc Gervais.
Okay.
And so those books were very helpful as I started putting together. So your lifestyle, start reading, start trying to get a positive mind frame. So one tool I started using is what we call a life wheel. I had seen it before in my other jobs, and I thought this would maybe be really helpful to structure my thoughts. So it looks like this. And basically it could be a pie. So with that tool, it allowed me to start looking at my life with grace, truth, and acceptance. So what I mean by that is I gave myself some grace where it's like I've done the best that I could. It's like forgiving yourself or giving yourself some self-love. And then truth, really taking a hard look at what each of these pieces of pie, where I'm at, and what's the trajectory. If I continue on this pathway, where am I going? And then accept the reality of it and say, don't be fearful, but really take a look and say, okay, I'm going to have to make some changes.
Now, over what period of time were you doing this kind of deep reflective introspection and dealing with the emotional piece?
The emotional, I mean, emotions take a while. And so one minute you're fine, the next minute you're crying, the next minute you're fine, the next minute you're anxious. But the more I started structuring and looking at my life, it seemed to really help me it's better to have knowledge of exactly what's going on than to stay in denial or without knowing.
Yeah.
And so I was still just thinking about how do I fix my Canadian life by using this tool. If I was going to be in Canada, what do I have to do to find solace and find peace and find a good rhythm for my life? But unfortunately, when I was breaking down that pie, the two main factors that kept tripping was my health and my finances. So I was waiting for this diagnosis, and it was either going to put my whole life on hold in Canada and I'm going to be just focusing on health for the next couple of years, or it's going, and then on the finance side, I had a 30-year mortgage. And if there was any increase in mortgage rates, I was going to be in big trouble. And what am I going to do? How am I going to fix that? And I just kept going around and around, like a Rubik's Cube, switching it around. And all of a sudden, something germinated. When I was with my ex, we had come to Portugal 4 times because he's Portuguese. And I fell in love with Portugal. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. It's safe. It's, got beautiful beaches. It's got beautiful scenery. It's got food quality is very high, has a Mediterranean diet. There's lots of sun and almost no winter. But the clincher was the cost of living. The cost of living here is not comparable to Canada. It's much cheaper to live here than to live in Canada.
Wow. How
So,
much cheaper would you say it is to live in?
well, I was paying my property tax. That was without the apartment, about 4,300. It was probably going to jump to about 6,000 with the permit from the city and had the apartment. And here, with my Airbnb business in a house that's twice the size, maybe 3 times the size of what I had in Ottawa, I'm paying 750 a year,
That's Canadian?
Canadian dollars. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. That's 750 euros. So that would be about 1,200 Canadian.
Hmm. Hmm. Which is, yeah, significantly less than
Hmm.
in Canada. Okay. So you started thinking about the potential for moving because finances were not going to work, your health was not going to work in Canada. So, Portugal was a big draw to you at that point.
That's right, because, well, even if I got through the cancer, the problem is the high bills were stressing me to the gills. And then I had, a micromanager boss that was making it so difficult that I was really had to consider leaving my job.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was so broken between that and my heartbreak. I didn't even feel like I was able to function properly at work anymore.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was really getting into a difficult situation.
But when you thought about Portugal, it gave you a feeling of uh, renewed possibility, that, hey, maybe there is a solution to this situation that I'm in.
It was like a light at the end of the tunnel. It's
Mm.
like, wait a minute, would this be possible? And this was something I had said many times that I loved Portugal and I really would want to live here, but it was like a dream, right? A dream that it wasn't sure would ever happen. And then when my ex left, then I thought, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to Portugal. And then while I'm looking at this life wheel and I started, seeing can it fit? So of course I do research and I start looking at each section and it's like, okay, it's safe. Okay, it's not far from Canada. There's no culture shock, right? Moving to maybe Saudi Arabia, there'll be a culture shock. Financially, it's doable. Then I looked into a visa. It's doable. I fit. I can find a visa that I can do. Then you start looking, can I bring my pets? What would my life be like? Can I do Airbnb? And all of these things was like, I think I can. So I go into the next phase called planning. And so I took all these sections off of my life wheel and I wrote each section on a little post-it note. I cleaned off a big wall in my place and I started writing down per section. So car, work, finances, um, and food, everything. And I just started brainstorming one idea per paper and gluing them up. And then there was something like, for example, the visa. I did research, I read about it, I knew I qualified for the D7 visa. So I started looking at what I would need to get for the D7 visa. Another example is retirement.
Mhm. It sounds like you started having fun. You were transitioning from, oh, I'm kind of depressed and I'm crying and stressed to, okay, let's see how we can plan to realize this dream. And I'm a
Well,
big believer in planning, and I think Ben Franklin said it best when he said, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
well, I can say that it was more about can I do this? Like, really? Like, can I? Is it possible? And then by putting up each section and doing research, because knowledge reduces anxiety and it makes a much clearer picture. I started looking at each aspect. I started breaking down each aspect. And the more research I did, the more the picture became clear. But also, every time I found out something, I would put a little check on my post-it note and I left it there. I didn't take it off. So that all of a sudden, when I was feeling, you know, your partner leaves you, you're not doing well at work, you're going through a depressed moment in time, you feel like you're not succeeding in anything. And so these were all mini wins. Every single one of them like was little mini wins. Oh, well, and there was days I didn't want to do anything. I was sulking. I was pitiful. I was poor me. And and again, it gave me focus because I'd look on my wall and I'd force myself. I say, pick one. Pick one thing that you have to go find out or you go have to do. You have to call or figure out. And it just it kept going. So then all of a sudden it's like a train, the wheel starts turning more and more. And yes, all of a sudden you get up in the morning and you're kind of starting to feel excited and you're starting to feel positive and you're starting to feel success.
That's really beautiful. I can just see you with all the sticky notes all over the wall,
And
getting
there were,
excited by all these wins, and thereby transforming your mindset
Mhm.
and reducing stress. Because I think one of the problems is that we have it all in our head. We don't have it down on paper. Once you write it down, it's concrete.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just swirling around. So I think that's a great idea. I'm going to start using that idea for sure in planning. Yeah, that's great.
And
So,
then again, with planning, because I knew it was about a move, it's big. This is not something you can fail at. There's no plan B. If I'm going to do this, because it was more like research. Can I really do this? I don't know. I don't know. And then, start putting up the sticky notes and checking off. And then it's like, oh, wow, lots of things are falling into place. And then you're moving your sticky notes around to make sure it's in a good process or in a good order. And then it grew because all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is what I do in Canada, but I'm going to have to mirror this in Portugal. If I sell my car here, I also have to buy a car here. If I close my bank accounts here, I have to open my bank accounts there. If I have to take a retirement, I still have to find a job here. So my wall just kept growing and growing. But because I was doing the research and because I was broke it down into small pieces, it didn't get overwhelming. It just all of a sudden took on that maybe my a dream can come true.
mhm,
Maybe I can change my lifestyle
mhm.
for the
So,
better.
okay. So it's becoming manifesting this dream is becoming more real as you plan. And then I guess the next step is to execute. So, what did you do as far as executing that plan that you had put together?
Well, the planning and the executing kind of webbed into each other because, like, for example, to find out about the D7 visa, if I can um, qualify for it, I had to do research. But while I did research, I also ended up doing steps of actually getting the documentation required, right? So things started um, coming together almost on its own. Like, for example, can I retire? So I had to look at my vacation leave. I had to look at my retirement date and see and call and ask, how does it affect me? If I move to another country, how does this affect me? Um, these are all things that they kind of are actually into the executing, but the actual execution. All right, you're gonna brace yourself, Isme. You know I'm a very logical person, right? You know that
Absolutely, you're demonstrating that to us right now.
but I am spiritual. I do pray to God and I thank God for all his grace. But August 22nd at 4:30 in the morning, I was woken up. That was in 2021. I was woken up. I was still teeter-tottering. Am I going to do this? Can I do this? I don't, I want to do this. I'm still going back and forth. And August 22nd, 4:30 in the morning, I can remember it as clear as day. I got woken up out of bed. I mean, I jumped out of bed and this has never happened ever in my 54 years, and it never happened since. But on that day, at that morning, I had a loud, booming male voice that says, "You must go now."
Wow. And how did you feel at that moment? Because this is a voice you're talking about. You said it's a male voice. So how did you feel in that moment when you got that message?
I got up, got dressed, and started packing.
Wow. You know what?
It was clear as day. It gives me goosebumps even now thinking about it. It was I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
Destiny, universe, God, my inner self, whatever you want to call it. I'm talking about it. It's giving me goosebumps running down my arms right now. It was so clear. It was so direct. And it wasn't like, did I hear that? What was that? It was like I jumped out of bed. I thought there was somebody in my room.
Well, listen, if it helps at all, I have had once in my life, a voice. It was like I heard a voice. I mean, there have been times when there's just a knowing. So you go somewhere and you just know you belong there or you need to be there. That's a different feeling from actually hearing a voice.
Hmm.
So I actually heard a voice once, and I didn't know, is that my voice? Is that me? Or is it outside of myself? I don't know. I'll never piece it together. But anyways, I can honestly say that I can relate. If that makes
Yeah.
us both crazy,
Well, I'm
so be
glad
it.
I'm not the only one. My goodness, because it's certainly not something that I really talked a lot about. But it really was that pivotal moment. That
Wow.
pivotal, I called my boss. I started the whole retirement process. I started everything on that day. Yeah, it was, I'm out of here. So that was August 22nd. And by October 2nd,
Mhm.
I was on a plane.
Wow, wow. And I think there was a timing issue too, because I think they were shutting down the airports and all of that. So had you
That
not
was at the end of October, by
Mhm.
a few weeks later.
had you not moved at that moment, you may not have been able to
I
leave.
would not have made it to Portugal.
Gosh, gosh, wow. We don't know what this all is, but it's very interesting, that's for sure. So
Absolutely.
Okay, so you get over to Portugal, and I'm thinking, how are you feeling at that moment where you land? Because are you feeling this fear and trepidation? Are you feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got another mountain to climb? Or, what go through your emotional, psychological landscape at that moment?
Well, of course, when I was at the airport with my 8 gigantic pieces of luggage, my dog in one cage, my two cats the other cage, a bike in a box, carry on, a purse. And I'm saying goodbye to my mother, sister, and children. It was difficult. But I was committed because if you have a plan B, then you'll never stay completely focused. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to really do something for me. And I needed to do this to save my health. Oh, by the way, the news was I didn't have cancer. Forgot to
Oh
say
my
that.
goodness. Thank goodness
Yes.
for
Yeah,
that. Holy. Okay,
that was
that's great.
so that was
When,
fantastic news.
when did you find that out? Before the voice or after?
Oh, absolutely. That was see, I that was in February, so it was maybe at the beginning of March.
Okay, okay.
But I still was toying. See, I was doing all the February, March, April, May, June, July, right? I was still toying and in the planning stage of can I do this? Can't I do this? It's
Mm,
only August 22nd that it was like, it seems like it toppled over. It's, like the last drop of water in that cup that just overflowed. It just, that's what pushed me into full action.
okay.
And when I got to Portugal, I have to say I was emotionally, psychologically burnt, crispy. I was feeling exhausted, and I basically, once I got to the beautiful Airbnb of my now friend Sylvia, uh, I spent 3 weeks basically doing nothing but eating healthy salads and sleeping.
Great. And after that, what was it that you had to do? Because I don't think you had the Airbnb. Um,
No, no, no.
yes.
Well, like remember I told you I had sticky notes. I had the Canadian sticky notes and I had other colors sticky notes for Portugal.
Mhm.
Well, I had copied down because I couldn't take my wall with me. I copied down inside of a binder, a book, and I had the list and I had taken the time to rearrange it so it could be as logical as I could make it, knowing that there has to be some flexibility. You know how it's like when you have somebody come and paint your room. Well, the ones that if that come, the professional painters, they put out all the tarps, they put out all the tape, they have the proper tools, they've measured the room, they have the proper primer and paint to go. And that's basically what I did with my plan. It provided me the setup. I still had to execute, but all the tools were kind of in place, so I knew what had to be done. And, of course, doing something like this it's a 2-year process. You have to be realistic that, look, it's going to take me 2 years to reestablish a home. First, a car, because you need to travel around, then finding a home, which might be an apartment first and then a home.
How long did that take you, by the way, to find that home? Between,
Uh, was there in October, and I did the purchase about 4 months later.
oh,
The was finished, the purchase 4 or 5 months after.
mhm,
Because, once I rested, that's I actually joined a real estate team. One of the first things I did
mhm,
is join real estate because in doing my research, I made connections with people from Portugal, and one lady manages a Portuguese team with EXP Portugal, and she invited me to join their company. So I did that, and I thought that would be a fabulous way to redirect a new career, something I've always kind of been interested in, and also get to have a base of people that I can, connect with.
so
And
you've
mhm,
been there for 3 years now. So, and over that time, you established your Airbnb and got into real estate as well. So,
mhm.
is that enabling you to deal with the financial piece, um, in a
Yeah,
proper
well,
way?
one of the things that had to happen in Canada is that the market had to provide, I did the calculations, and the market had to provide a certain amount of money for the house I was selling. Without that amount, because I had to pay my bills, all of them, and I still had to have money to come. And because of that voice that told me do things now, I put the house up and almost immediately and sold it. Uh, you know, um, and that process allowed for me to have the finances to clear off all of the 30 years mortgage and all of the other debts that I had and start over. And of course, I still have a little mortgage here, but it's because of the cost of living, the cost of housing. I was able to purchase a home that was much more affordable and pretty good mortgage rate. And the cost of living is so much less. Like groceries are so much less here that, again, it allows for much more flexibility.
Mhm. So you have financial viability there now. You have financial security, your health piece, I mean, it couldn't be better because of you staying in a climate that's really nice with, I guess, more organic foods and so on. So it's a healthy lifestyle. You're probably always outdoors and exercising and moving and all of that. So, at this point in time, would you say that you have created the life that you deserve? Because you certainly started over, but have you created the life that you deserve?
When you first approached me to ask me if I would share my story and gave me the title you were thinking of, it I really took it to heart. It was something that I hadn't really stopped to think about because, of course, once you have a house, you have to get installed and you have to get to know people at work. And I installed my Airbnb and got that all going. And it's a beautiful question because to answer it in all honesty, it, it was like, or does it feel show offy or whatever? And it's like, no, own it. Own it because I worked really, really hard and I went through a whole lot of stuff. And I also had to take the consequences with my actions. And I will say, for the love of my family and my friends, I had to move away from them. And that is still a little bit difficult. But, I've had so many people come visit, and, so many of my family have come by and embraced this move that I've done. It uh it has allowed me to embrace that yes, I have created the life that I deserve and that I could only have dreamed about a few years back.
Wow. You know what? I am so proud of you, Denise, because,
Oh,
I kind of knew bits and pieces of your journey, but it's only now through this interview that I know exactly how you began to start over and come out the other side, creating this life. Um, I did not know the details. I didn't know what steps you took. And I love the way you were so methodical about it. And by doing all that, you got more excited and the plan became more real to you than just a dream, you know? So yeah, I'm really, really honored that you came on and was so candid about your experience because I think this episode is really going to help a lot of people. I know a lot of people that are struggling with, transformation of their lives, either by choice or because that's what they need to do. And yeah, I'm going to recommend to our viewers to share this with your family, friends, loved ones who you know are going through this because I'm sure they will really appreciate it. It's not the only way to do things. And by the way, I would love to know how others have been able to transform their lives. Yeah, so put that in the comments. And if you like this kind of content, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because, we're going to have more inspirational stories like Denise's. And I just want to ask you another question, last question. What are your plans now that you're more settled?
well, I'm possibly going to write a book.
Oh boy, we'll have another reason to have you.
That's something that I would really like to do on my, now that I realize that dreams can come true, and I have a process that I can use,
Mhm.
take a look, make a plan, and then execute. Yeah, I really hope I can write a book that can help people see that there is something on the other side of struggles. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. And the poet, philosopher Rumi, I think said it best when he said, um, "The wound is where the light enters you." And people who have interpreted, his message is, they've interpreted as he's saying that, when you have these wounds, there is a self-awareness that happens, and that is what enables you to change your life, to transform it. Uh,
you know what? That's amazing. Because you know what's the name of because in Portugal they name their houses. You know what the name of my house is?
no, tell me.
It's called Casa Alvorada. And what does that mean? It means sunrise villa, where
Wow,
the sun comes, you
wow.
know? Yeah.
That's great. And we know the power of the sun, right? So
Yeah.
there you go. There you go. It's wonderful. And I need some sun soon. But anyway, that's for another episode. Um, okay, so thank you very much again, Denise, for being so authentic, so real, and so honest. These are the types of conversations that actually can help others. Because if you think about it, our ancestors, how did they get through? How is it that our DNA is still here? It's because we shared our stories and our struggles with one another, and we learned from people through their experience. So I hope this episode helps as many people as we can, and I'm sure the book will be a great book as well, and with all the details that
Yeah.
we can do here. So thank you so much, Denise, and have a great day. And to everybody, local and global. Bye for now.
Bye, Isme. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I wish you all the best in success in your podcast.
Thank you so much, Denise. Okay, bye-bye. Love
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye. Love you too.